Hey Tata Olande because Zimbabwe muhle muri Zimbabwe lingali chona njani mthokazo muhle Zimbabwe muhle kwazwai muri Zimbabwe. If you're tuning in right now, welcome. You are tuned in to LiveTalk The Connection, coming to you live from Studio 7, Voice of America, muri Zimbabwe. Today is Tuesday, September 7, 2021. Muri Zimbabwe mthokazo muhle. I'm your host, Mike Hove. Once again, muri Zimbabwe, from wherever you are in the world, welcome to The Connection, Studio 7's very own youth program that targets tackling anything and everything youth-related. We're coming to you live from our studios in Washington, D.C. Muri Zimbabwe, nasi mchirongwa chedu chewechidiki, namhlanje kuhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo. Tonight on The Connection, we speak to youth about the change in lockdown restrictions in Zimbabwe. Today, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, just a couple of hours ago, announced that Zimbabwe is going to be shifting from level 4 of the COVID-19 lockdown. It is now on a level 2. We also focus on the opening of schools in Zimbabwe. Of course, this is for non-examination classes. This is something that happened yesterday. If you're looking to join us, Muri Zimbabwe, +1 202 619 2077 is the number to call if you're looking to join us live on air. For those that are streaming this conversation live on our Facebook pages, as we speak, we're live on our 3 Facebook pages, that being VOA Shona, VOA Studio 7, and of course, VOA Ndebele. So lingakhohlwa izulukandaba ukufitizela lapha yokubhala ukuthi like, to press the like button ukubona ukuthi ngempela zulukandaba sisonke like so. Thilithose phano phachirongwa chedu chewechidiki njalo libukele uhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo ngobunengi benu. Also feel free to write your comments in the comment section, and we're going to be reading those comments live on air. Without wasting time with Zimbabwe, let's delve into it. First up, an update on COVID-19. Now, according to the most recent information released by the Ministry of Health and Childcare, Zimbabwe currently has 125,671 confirmed COVID-19 cases, 117,036 recoveries, and 4,493 deaths. To date, 2,729,955 people have taken the COVID-19 vaccine. When we're talking about the amount of people that are fully vaccinated, that means both the first and the second jab. Zimbabwe currently has 1,728,729 people that have taken the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, as mentioned earlier on, just a couple of hours ago, Muri Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa informed the nation that Zimbabwe is going to be changing lockdown status from a level 4 of the COVID-19 lockdown down to level 2. To hear more, let us head over to a clip that we have courtesy of Zim Papers TV network of President Emmerson Mnangagwa's address. To watch the full clip, head over to their Facebook page.
The relaxation includes, but is not limited to, the following measures. 1. A curfew beginning at 22 hours and ending at 05:30 hours. 2. Ordinary business enterprise is to operate between 08 hours and 19 hours. 3. Restaurant and bars within hotels and lodges to open between 08 hours and 22 hours. 4. Bottle stores may sell liquor to customers for consumption off the premises between 10 hours and 16 hours. 5. Beer halls and nightclubs to remain closed during the lockdown period. 6. Public gatherings to be limited to not more than 100 people with observancy of public health.
Well, Muria Zimbabwe, that was President Emmerson Mnangagwa addressing the nation earlier on. The clip that you watched there was courtesy of Zim Papers TV network on their program, Diplomatic Passport. Visit their Facebook page to watch the full address and, of course, to watch the program. Muria Zimbabwe, sikuhlelo lethu labasakhulayo, chirongwa The Connection earlier on. Mangamchinzwaka kubva kune mthungamiri wenyika, President Emmerson Mnangagwa vachiudzawo ka Muria Zimbabwe kuti aiwa Zimbabwe yabva kapa level 4 yechirongwa che-COVID-19 lockdown yave pa level 2 uhlelo lwe-COVID-19 lockdown. To hear more about this, we're joined by the founder of Community Podium, Umnumzana Unkosikona Dibiti, a friend of the show. We've had him here a couple of times. He's joining us live via telephone from Matobo. Dibiti, welcome to the program, bro.
Hey, thanks for how are you?
I'm good. How are things going in Matobo?
I'm not over right, but yes, so far so good.
So nantu tabalukona
Yes.
nantu tabalukona guhlelo Diviti. Of course, the most recent announcement by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Of course, this is also coming during a time where just last week they announced that they would be loosening a lot of restrictions that we're going to delve into a little further. But how are people taking in this news that President Mnangagwa announced earlier on today?
Well, you find that like Napa Emapisa in corner. You find that there's a lot of mining activity, both legal and illegal. So we find that within the Mapisa like area in Ale, there's a lot of traffic and a lot of activity. You find people are always busy around where they are, especially from the cities where you have to move from one point to the other or intercity travel. So most of their livelihood is around there. But the big change that happened is the schools opening. The schools open like indoors for everyone. And, you have schools like Kanalapa, Masisa, Center. So there was a lot of high of activity, parents dropping the girls to school and things like that. So it lighted up everything. And of course, there was a lot of intercity travel where to take learners to school and things like that. So that has been the situation. I also checked out early morning today, MRT Station and the main hospital. People were queuing for the jobs there as well. Not very long queues, but good enough queues. But, it's also gone to issues of accessibility because it's closer to my pizza than Kevin. So, yeah, that is the current situation in my pizza.
Now, of course, let's touch into the restrictions themselves. Dating back to last week, this week seems to just be another extension of other loosening restrictions. But what are your thoughts on the restrictions so far? As you mentioned, the schools, etc. How are all these things being affected?
Now, the big issue is around, livelihood. About the it has more of the livelihood, and also for business it's been terrible. Really, closing at 3:30 and opening at 8 a.m. It was 3:30. That's when other people start thinking, what do I buy or where do I buy and things like that. So the business working hours was very, very, very minimal. That was making it very hard for even business people. Imagine you are there at 3:30 like everywhere closed. You can't transfer it, you can't do anything. It was quite biting for business people, even Kolarape, Ematobo, not mentioning those in the city. So it's one of those things that have really limited business transactions and limited even business activity because even if you travel, obviously that day you are not going to sell anything, so the business will be closed. So this is a more likely welcome for those who are in business. At least they can trade up to around 7 p.m. and then curfew is now at 10 p.m. So it brings back the normalcy aspect and also trying to get what you can get because opening of schools, that opens up everything. Imagine, last last-minute school rushes, the shop closes at 3:30, you're supposed to buy this and the other, and things like that. So that's why you find some supermarkets are now selling back door, because people will be outside, but they want to buy, but they can't buy because of the short business hours that they there. So this one was quite an overdue kind of announcement in court, in terms of, COVID-19 cases also going down, increasing the deaths and things like that. Well, people were looking forward to this change 2 weeks ago, but never the case. But it has come now, yeah.
Now, let's focus a little more about on where you are and, of course, surrounding areas, in the rural areas of Zimbabwe. How are people adapting to these? Because obviously, like we mentioned, yes, uMongameli Emmerson Mnangagwa announced namhlanje to say that Zimbabwe is now on level 2. But following last week's announcement by the post-cabinet by Honorable Monica Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe was already under loosened restrictions. So how are people adapting to this over the past week?
I'll give you a scenario, Mike, where like 2 weeks ago, I was with two guys there, channel. You find that people were adapting to the lockdown regulations. But in at the corner, it was around the vaccine. People are failing to access the vaccine. I remember I spoke to a lady in the local Empumelelo, Enkaila. You was mentioning that I walked 11 kilometers to the vaccination center. I got the first jab. When I walked, they gave me the date for the second jab. When she went there for the second jab, she found out that the second jab was not there. So she was like, I have to walk again. And who will tell me that it's there or not? So it's some of those things where people have adapted to the restrictions, the supermarket closing, and all of that stuff. But the issue is, so this has been the same case even in our platform today, the update, which is people in Binga were welcoming, which at least but the issues of the vaccine accessibility are also pertinent. I'll give you an example. The Matobo hospital is close to Mapisa. It's like 4 Ks from Mapisa, but it's like maybe 8 to 9 Ks from K's Center. The moment you go remote, it's now a foreign place, because someone else to do maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 Ks from the vaccination center. So that is a major stumbling block. And in that gap, those who have been vaccinated and who have managed to get vaccinated, maybe they can travel, or there's that information gap now, because many people who have not been vaccinated are now getting a lot of conspiracy theories, and things like that. So there's that kind of complacency that creeps in, because obviously no one can spend 60 rand or 100 rand so you find that now the vaccine accessibility is now for the haves and the have not in the remote areas, because if you can't access the vaccination, if you can't cycle, also the field. So it's like you so in that process, you find that there is a lot of misinformation that can take place, because outreach program. So you find that there is that kind of the vaccinated and the unvaccinated living in the same community, and it's like those who are vaccinated have access, and those who are not have no access. So why this is information where we are encouraging people to vaccinate, but where and how?
Khona ngapho ke DBT silokhu sikudabalunya about i-vaccination program. how are people reacting to local show nguhulumende and all these different companies that are saying ukuthi nxa ungakahlatshwa leli jekiseni elivikela i-COVID-19 kumele ungabuye emsebenzini, kumele ungabuye esikolo, and there are other buildings that you can't get into. How are people reacting to this njengoba uyasho ukuthi ikakhulukazi emaphandleni bakhona abaningi abangakalithathi leli jekiseni?
Yikho lapho kule nkinga khona enkulu fine. That's where there is a lot of misinformation. Kuthiwa laba ba-O-level students bethiwa hey alizwanga ngale Harare kuthiwa bahambe ku-examination bayehle kubhasi. Abazali sebethelezile ukuthi abayifana manje njengoba izikolo sezivulwa ngapha engazange ahlaba. So you find that becomes a problem because it's the issues of accessibility. But in that accessibility aspect, you find that this government has put in measures to say for the public service in particular, no gap, no work. And so which means everyone, you have to find a way to make sure that you get vaccinated, which means to cover the cost because we are not close to the vaccination center. If I'm talking about, it's very far from, I think it's about 30 or so cases from KV, which means it will be 30 something, 36 or almost 40 from Batista. You find that gap, which means the community that is there, that includes your teacher, that includes your in different departments work in these remote communities, abalimi and the whole way. So it means they've got the same struggles that the community has. So they still have to access the jobs in these same places where they have to access. So it has gone now, the conversation has gone to the students. Vaccination card. Because accessing the vaccine comes to be a cost because you have to get transport and you go and vaccinate and go back again. It is 2 times. So which means if it's 60 rand to go, which means you need a budget of 120 for you to be fully vaccinated. And it is slowing down, the enthusiasm in every corner of ground and the information that has already been given. So that's all so I never vaccinated. Why didn't I vaccinate? They become to be narratives within the communities instead of stigmatizing those who can't access or those who have not resources to move.
Asithintene udaba lolu ngolimi lokamama ngamafishane bafo ikakhulukazi sikhangela udaba lolu lokuthi isikolo sezivuliwe. Siyabona phela ababalisi bakhona ikakhulukazi emaphandleni abalokhu betshengisela besithi esikolo indaba le PPE khanya ngani iyahlupha. There's still izikolo eziningi emaphandleni that still don't have access to amanzi ngezinto ezitshiyeneyo. So bona bayatshengisela basithi sikhuluma njengoba yebo izikolo sezivuliwe kodwa they are still not safe from umkhuhlane lo we COVID-19. Ematobo izinto zime njani kakhulukazi ezikolo?
Ezikolo ukhiphathe ukhona manje kakhulu ngile transport. Yazi transport le yezukho is a challenge. Schools needed to transport people back to school, right? We are talking about Ramaphosa's Nabo Mindala to that. They needed to use the Zupco transport. And the same teachers need the Zupco transport. It's different because the Zupco, having the capacity to have all those rules fulfilled. I think I saw someone on Twitter, on the Zupco Twitter account, they were mentioning for schools that need transport is reach out. It was already late because the schools had already deported. People were supposed to be traveling by Sunday to school. They said, guys, it's school on Monday. So the transport issues and the cost of the transport is a problem. You find that in areas like Komato, very whether private, whether a combi, RTGS, local, Bafuna Amaran, or US dollars. So these people are not getting, civil services are not getting they are not getting any money in US dollars. So it means, if you engine, which is a Tolama US dollar or Amaran, which is better than Rand, but the refugee now to tell you about now, I think to tell you the So it has been, that transition has not been easy because, the transport network, the availability of the transport itself, it has been a major challenge. And I hope this can be rectified now or in the future. We have seen that even today, where there is an introduction of the NRZ commuter trains in the cities. So it's a big challenge in transport that has. And emakhaya is even worse because emakhaya kunebhasi eyodwa kuphela iZulu. Iyasuke ekuseni Mike, iyasuke ekuseni ngabo-7 iye koBulawayo ngo-1 yasuka. Ungavele uyikhutha yikho khona.
Manje,
if there is a fine as well, if you are found in a mshika car, you are fined $2,000 to jail. So it's a rock and a hard place for.
Manje indaba le eyokusolakala kwamabhasi bafo iphazamisa njani impilo zababalisi kanye labafundi?
Iyaphazamisa kakhulu ngoba yonke into yabo uyenza iyabi lama-delays. Ma izukholana uyikhutha la eka 1 o'clock isuka koBulawayo ite eMatopo okuphelile ngawo sokumele ukuthi uzane kusasa because akule into ezathutha njalo nxa izaba khona ukuthi sokuyilezi eziyabe zithovisa okuthiwa yimshikashikela le we-government saying ukuthi ungatholakala uphakathi ibotshwe leyo mota ususekhipha i-2,000 sokuthi kuzaba nzima for abafundi kube nzima njalo for ababalisi ngoba befuna ukuya emsebenzini. Imagine ufuna ukuthi ungene emsebenzini ngebantu uyiphuthe leyo bhasi kumbe igcwale uthi ufika kwabala ukugcwele abantu shuya ibhasi ikhala abantu abangayizesi and how many people will be heading for Matopo ngesikhathi khona leso uyithole sigcwele ayisoziphenduke futhi izothatha abantu sihambile iyodwa. So ukuthi abantu bazathola nzima ukuhamba okuzayenza bangela ukuthi abantu beqine sebengena ezimoteni lezo kuthiwa akazivunile and then njalo ugovernment isethe kona ungabantu kulezo ubhadala futhi fine. So usuzakho ngogada na ufayilisiwe and the cost is getting to be higher and higher for abantu nabafundi ngokunjalo.
Now, as we wrap up, Bafo Ngoba, my second guest is already on the line. Of course, we're seeing these developments happening, which seem to be welcomed by our young people across the board. What do you think needs to be done now to make sure the COVID rate stays low and Zimbabwe can continue lowering these COVID-19 lockdown levels as President Emmerson Mnangagwa is doing right now?
I think I've noticed a significant difference between the ones who got the first jab and the ones who got the second jab. It's like a million, really. Ngaka we 2.7 million, ngapha we 1.7 million. It's like, so there is that gap ekhona. Why are we having people, getting vaccinated or vaccinated lapha, achiyele lapha? We need to look into that as well to then say, okay, how many people are fully vaccinated? If there are 1.7 million, while it's the other, that took the first jab, so what is the best strategy around this so that we have people who are fully vaccinated? Or is there a gospel that says if you get the first jab, you're okay, the second jab doesn't matter? I don't know. But Google head immunity and 10 million and also preserve lives in terms of because the country is now open like fully. 100 gatherings of 100 people are now permitted, intercity travel is also allowed. So maybe vaccination program njalo iwapha amagcekisa angabekhona kuma-communities. My major worry is edolobheni ngalabantu sebezisa ukuthi ngingabeze ngoba ngapha kusasebenza umsebenzi omningi because abantu basafisa ukuthi kuhamba njani njalo i-information yakhona ibe-accessible kakhulu. I'm glad that level 2 50% of employees will be allowed that way because that is also the 30%. So yabuza kubani kuma-government office ngoba kungela muntu abantu besenza manje Tuesday omunye beyenza Thursday isenza yazo le but if there's 50% maybe even ama-departments in government or government officials responsible for sharing information kuma-communities can be of help ukuze ukuthi abantu besizakale.
All right, well, Mr. Diviti, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Lapha kuhlelo lwethu labasakhulayo. As usual, we really appreciate your input, and please do stay safe where you are in Matobo.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Right. Well, Murie Zimbabwe, you were hearing there from Nkosikona Diviti. We had him live via telephone from Matobo. We had a wish to have him on Skype. Matobo kukhanya ngani kulodubo lwamagetsi kanye network so sitha hayi othi simlethe ngocingo. Murie Zimbabwe, if you're tuning in right now, you're tuned into LiveTalk The Connection. The focus of the discussion is the COVID-19 lockdown and, of course, the opening of schools. Musakangano Murie Zimbabwe, you can still write your comments in the comments section. And of course, call us live on air +1 202 619 2077. Murie Zimbabwe, makatira chongwa chedu chewe chidiki, uhlelo The Connection.
Kana kudarika ezai kusaungana ezai kusaenda paruzinzi nekuti COVID-19 chirwere chiriko garai muchisanitizer gara unekako kasanitizer nekuti kaneuraya virus chinza masymptoms yevirus kukozera isymptom kupisa muviri isymptom kutadza kupema zvakanaka zvana chakanaka pa masymptoms kana uchida rubatsiro fona pa2019 rubatsiro runouya pauri asingati zvichengetedzei hama.
Shout out to Mr. T. Darira Swa Inindin Darira Jazz Signal. They are partnering up with Roots Africa on, of course, a COVID-19 message. Hans Gezai Maoko 20 seconds. Kana kudarika Murie Zimbabwe. Uhlelo The Connection. Thank you so much to Mr. Jazz Signal and, of course, Roots Africa for letting us use that message. Now, Murie Zimbabwe, Lamhlanje Uhlelo, earlier on, we mentioned that we're also going to be touching on Indaba Yokuvulwa kwezikolo, schools opening. Now, of course, as we mentioned last week, schools opened last week for examination classes, and schools then opened yesterday for non-examination classes. All of these are in-person classes. But now, last week, members of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, or of course, popularly known as TRUZ, refused to go back to school as they pleaded incapacitation, and of course highlighted that they were dissatisfied by government's statements that the government was saying they're ready for in-person classes, and they felt as though schools are not ready to cater for in-person classes. But before we head over to our conversation with the spokesperson of TRUZ, Mr. Tembekwayo, who's going to be joining us live via telephone, let us head over to a report that was filed by VOA correspondent Columbus Mavunga that touches on the situations in schools.
Zimbabwe's Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union says it will only call off their strike when the government addresses their concerns. These include salaries that are below the poverty level and the lack of personal protective equipment against COVID-19.
And there's negligence on the part of the responsible authority to make sure that there's enough safety to guarantee our learners and our teachers from the pandemic. They should have been providing water, adequate water supply, enough PPEs.
Some students have been going to school since Monday to try learn among themselves as there are no teachers. The teachers' union warns that classrooms may turn into super spreaders of COVID-19. But Zimbabwe's government says it has been working to ensure classrooms are safe.
We have been putting in place new infrastructure to ensure that we decongest the existing infrastructure to ensure that there is social and physical distancing for the prevention and management of COVID-19. We have also made sure that our schools have got adequate supplies of sanitizers and water.
UNICEF Zimbabwe, which welcomes school reopening, says it has been helping students and government during the COVID-19 lockdown.
The two key approaches were, one, looking at how we can support the loss of learning as a result of the school closure. The second one was looking at how to keep the schools safe and ready and prepared for children to return and go back to school.
Zimbabwe teachers hope such organizations can assist the government and supply the resources they require, adequate PPEs and salaries which allow them to live above the poverty line. Columbus Mavungam for VOA News, Harare.
Well, Muria Zimbabwe, you're hearing there from Columbus Mavunga, VOA News. He was reporting there from Harare. On, of course, the current state of Okwenzakalayo Ezikolo. We also know that UNICEF have visited one of the schools in Wesley today. We're going to be running that clip a little later. But to hear more about the teachers' protest and, of course, what's currently going on in schools, we're joined by the ATU's spokesperson, Mr. Tembaguye Moyo. Moyo, welcome to the program. How are you doing? Mr. Moyo, are you there on the line?
How are you?
There we are. I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chief?
Yeah, we are on.
Right. Now, thank you so much for taking time out to join us on our program here. Now, the reason we have you here, of course, is to focus on the opening of schools for non-examination classes. Which is what happened yesterday. And of course, you guys have been protesting since last week. Tell us your reaction to that, to schools opening yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday we had some protests in Harare where we looked at transport issues and the issue of incapacitation for teachers.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Excuse me?
I'm saying, could you expand on that and tell us a little more about that situation?
Yeah, the situation is bad because look at transport issues. People are not having transport. They were promised the Zupo at the cheapest prices, but they get up and queue for long hours without any buses. It has gone back to the monopoly that was crept back long back when combis were introduced. Now we look at issues of COVID. There is no social distancing, and people are queuing for so many hours waiting for a single bus that will take them. And in those buses, people are seated and some are standing as passengers. You're standing in a queue and you also stand in a bus traveling people.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to want to head into that discussion a little later in terms of the Zupco buses. But right now, I firstly want to focus on the state of education within the schools themselves. You partially touched on COVID there. Which is what I want to lead into here. We've heard government over the past 2 weeks insisting that schools are now COVID-19 safe. The social distance issue has been addressed. And of course, the PPE issue has been addressed. Is this what you guys are seeing on the ground across the board, both in public and private schools?
When we get to issues of education at schools, social distancing is still an issue.
Mm-hmm.
PPEs are still an issue. People ratio is still an issue. Incapacitation in terms of teachers is still an issue. Schools open on the 6th. We are now witnessing issues of public cases at schools.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can say is government did not play. It is there's 60 millions in terms of education, but there's nothing that is given to schools. As we are now, schools are on their own, teachers are in their own, parents are there, should help the government fund So we look at the situation of lockdown, parents and the government, school, learners and teachers. There's nothing that the government has done.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mr. Moyo, could you please hold on to the line for 1 second? I want to run another package that we have of where UNICEF was visiting one of the schools today, and I'd like to hear your reaction to that. So Muria Zimbabwe, as I mentioned earlier on when we ran the package by Columbus Mavunga, today UNICEF representatives were actually in the suburbs of Eastleigh in Zimbabwe alongside government officials, whereby they toured some of these schools to observe whether or not COVID-19 regulations are being observed within these schools, and of course, most importantly, for UNICEF to figure out where they can help government to ensure that COVID-19 regulations and of course education can continue in Zimbabwe. Let us head over to a clip that we have of the UNICEF country director to Zimbabwe, Dr. Tajuddin Oyewale. And when we come back, we're going to hear more from Mr. Moyo, the spokesperson of ATUS.
The message is on learning and quality, and I think the PS has said everything I wanted to say. That for our children, going to school is one thing, but learning in school is important. But when we talk about learning, not just learning how to read and write only, but the skills and the competencies to survive in the world of today. And I'm happy that our work together will reinforce this area of work as my second most important message. Now the third one is on safety. With COVID, we have to now rethink school safety. And I'm eager to see, beyond what we saw at the entrance, where we do the temperature check and the rest, I really want to meet with the children and see how they themselves are taking in the practices of being safe in school, because that's important to keeping the school running. So I'm eager to see that. But already I'm seeing some materials on the wall. I'm seeing that we are all on face masks. I'm seeing that we are all being asked to take our temperature, and these are good signs as we look to start. Then the fourth one for me is continuity. With COVID, schools closed, school open, and really it has forced us to think differently about how we manage the school. And I'm happy that this is the school where one of the alternative approaches to continue learning was launched, the learning classroom. But also beyond the school, and also in locations where the internet may not be possible, the whole catch-up strategy, the whole alternative learning, radio learning, TV learning, using workbooks, these are measures that we have.
Well, Muria Zimbabwe, that was Mr. Tajuddin Oyewale, who is the country director of Zimbabwe, of course, for UNICEF there. They were touring some of the schools in Wesley today, and of course, UNICEF seems to be satisfied. Mr. Moyo, back to you on the line there. What would you then say to something like that, where we have organizations like UNICEF saying they're actually happy with the current state of Zimbabwean engagement or the government's readiness to open schools? Hello, Mr. Moyo. Could you repeat that? We unfortunately can't hear you right now.
Hello?
Yes, there you are. Please go ahead and respond to what I was saying there.
Yeah, only that I'm traveling. Sometimes network.
Okay. No, go ahead. So I was saying to you, how would you then react to something like that, where we have UNICEF officials, touring some of these schools? Today they were in Wesley suburbs, and they're saying they were really satisfied with how government responded, ensuring that these schools are all safe from COVID-19.
Yeah, on issues of COVID-19 and the government, we have a big gap.
Mm-hmm.
The government is using lip service, and the situation on the ground is different. When we look at the COVID-19 situation, sometimes the government asks the parents to chip in, help the government in procuring of the PPEs. Now, but we look at the responsibility of the government on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the lockdown, parents cannot do anything because of lockdown. The government on its own as the leader of everything, should provide everything. But when we look at the situation that we have, currently. There's nothing the government is doing for the schools. There's nothing that the government is helping in terms of PPEs. Yes, I think we are saying we should have the government coming in. When we look at the Constitution, education is for free. Because parents are paying, government is coming in requiring PPEs in every school so that learners are safe, teachers are safe.
Now, what about the discussion around your salaries, of course? Has there been any progress since last week when schools opened for examinations?
Excuse me?
I'm saying, what about the discussion around your salaries? Because that's another one of the grievances that you guys are having as ATUs. Has there been any progress with regards to that?
Yeah, as ATUs, we have a stance that we have. We're looking at teachers as professionals. We're looking at education sector as the top entity in each and every community. Teachers need to be remunerated so that they perform their duties. Education is key to the development of each and every state that is in the world.
Right. Okay. Mr. Moyo, I'm going to need to hold you on the line one more time there. There's another package that we need to run, of course, that's going to delve into the discussion that you started earlier on about the ZUPCO buses. Now, Muria Zimbabwe, recently members of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union, that is Mr. Moyo's organization, took to the streets of Zimbabwe, as he was referring to yesterday, in protest of the current state of Zimbabwean public transport. To hear more, let us head over to a clip of Gerald Tavengwa, who is the Secretary for Education and Research, who was explaining more about why they find it so important that as educators, they stand alongside other organizations in protest of the current state of the transport system in Zimbabwe.
Nekuti zvatakaita izvozvi tikaverenga pangori nemazupko maviri aya ndoarida kusevhisa vanhu vakawanda sezvizvi saka zupko harisi kuwanikwa zvachose tichakwira zupko kana vakanga vatenga mabhazi akawanda izvi zvavo zvekuda kupadza kuda tagwirei kuti avaramba achiwana mari isusu kana ndo zvatiri kuramba saka isu semacitizens ngatirambei kukwira zupko ngatikwirei zvatinoda tatenda.
Well, muri Zimbabwe manga muchinzwa kubva kuna vatavengwa apa nhengo yesangano reATUs vanga vachigunun'una vachiti havasi kufara nenyaya iri kuitika patinotarisa nyaya yekuwana mabhazi. Mr. Moyo, are you still on the line?
Hello?
Yes, okay, you're still there. So I want to now drag you back to the discussion of the ZUPCO buses. We're seeing a clip of Mr. Tavengwa there where you guys were protesting yesterday. Tell us a little more about that. Why are you guys as educators finding it so important to take to the streets to protest about the transport situation in Zimbabwe?
I was speaking to you earlier on during our open material. I missed your question. You were raising a question on that transport issue. I saw the biggest challenges. What are the questions? Sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, is this still Mr. Moyo?
Hi.
Is this Mr. Moyo or Mr. Masaraure?
Oh, this is Masaraure now. What was it?
President, I tried to go to Ndimika Mazoshuka Kapa program. All right, Mr. Masaraure, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Earlier on, we were speaking to Mr. Moyo. We just kind of ran a clip of Mr. Tavengwa there, who was protesting in the streets there. And he was talking about the protests that ATU's members are doing against the ZUPCO buses, saying, you know, asking for more or easier access to transport. And I was asking, could you kind of expound on that and tell us why it's so important for you guys as educators to take that position and protest against the current state of transport in Zimbabwe?
Okay, sorry, again, I think this is an issue. Your question is related to
we still can't hear you clearly, Mr. Masaraure.
Okay, so I was saying I didn't really get your question. You are raising a question around this issue. I think the next year.
Okay, no problem.
What was the question?
No problem. I'm happy to repeat myself. The question was around the Zupco protest that you guys were doing just the other day. And I was asking why it's so important for you guys as educators to protest for easier access to public transport.
Okay. So with the protest that we held around the transport issue, the transport question, which is very important in as far as the delivery.
The network keeps cutting off, Mr. Masaraure. Okay, it seems as though we're not able to get Mr. Masaraure. Mr. Masaraure, are you still on the line? Okay, it looks as though we're going to have to drop Mnumzana Masaraure. Let's continue with the program. And let's see if my producers can try get back Mr. Masaraure back on the line. In the meantime, Zimbabwe my comments as we continue with our conversation. I see in the comments we have Andresi Viega saying Tiriti live kuno ku Mozambique tinemi tinotenda Mr. Viega itai masongo arutanzi ndikuonai ndirikuno mkoma Mike aiwa tinotenda mkoma itai thank you so much hanzi na Andresi Vaisa number yake hanzi ndifondere ndiriku Mozambique ubright mpala uyasho ngempela ukuthi amaborder akavulwe he wants the borders to be opened phansi kohlelo lolu COVID-19 lockdown sibona ukuthi abantu bathini kukhasi lethu ele-VOA Ndebele. Then we continue ngohlelo lethu lwabasakhulayo muri eZimbabwe amsakhanganwe muno khwanisa ukufonela pa number zinothi +1 202 465 0318. Siyabona ngempela udeliwe khumalo uthi lockdown is strictly in Matabeleland nangulo ngumbono kakhe uqhubani uyabuza uthi Dibiti ungaphi eMatobo uthi kulabantwana abafunda esheshane abahlala eMapisa kuzaba nzima ukuthi ukubabalisi because kule kombi A1 kuphela. So those are some of the comments. Nangu Thandazani uyabhala uthi ukhona umsakazi into ye lockdown kwele Zimbabwe ayihlangani ndawo le COVID-19 asikhulumeni iqiniso i-lockdown nangu uyabhala ngempela uthi hayi ngombono wakhe lockdown there's more to it than just indaba COVID-19. Chirongwa chedu chebe chidiki muri Zimbabwe uhlelo The Connection. Now as we continue our discussion muri Zimbabwe the COVID-19 restrictions that were loosened last week don't just affect young Zimbabweans within the education sector and within the business sector. It seems as though Obed Masaraure is back on the line. Mr. Masaraure, are you back on the line?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, perfect. Within the next couple of minutes, let's try wrap up our conversation real quick here and head into it. Please, could you kindly expound on what you were talking about why you guys find it important to protest for the Zupco buses?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
We're still talking about the Zupco buses, and you were explaining about the protest.
Well, the protest that we held recently, so we are holding protests consistently, focusing on saving our education. The team is hashtag Save Our Education Zimbabwe, ZW. Why we are saying that? We are saying the education sector is in crisis. It is in a crisis within 3-4 days moment. 3-4 days in one, the teachers themselves are not ready to teach. Why are they not ready to teach? It's because they are incapacitated, so they can't be expected to be in the classroom. Secondly, we have the parents who cannot afford to be sending their own learners out to the classroom. Why? Because they can't afford the fees. They wiped out. They wiped out because of the long lockdown. Thirdly, the third fault of it is the learner preparedness, where our learners themselves are not ready to be in the classroom because obviously they've been going through a lot of challenges. But most fundamentally, the most fundamental thing is that the transport crisis also is now coming in as a policy decision that could just be resolved way back. It's a policy decision that was made, which is now escalating the incapacitation crisis. How is it being escalated? Teachers and learners are failing to travel to the workplace. So what has to be done? We are saying we need efficiency in the public transport sector. This is why we were questioning yesterday when we were announcing the Zupco monopoly is not working. So this is really the character and nature of of the protest, which would definitely be escalated. It was really just began the protest. We will continue protesting until the education crisis is resolved.
Now, tell me something. Of course, you're asking for the crisis to be resolved. We hear today our government saying NRZ is going to be joining the ranks here in terms of helping decongestion. And of course, just the other day, our government announced that they're going to be bringing in more Zupco buses. Is this the move that you as educators are welcoming?
You said
I'm saying government just the other day announced that they're going to be purchasing more Zupco buses, and today they announced how NRZ is going to be joining the ranks in helping the decongestion with the current troubles that people are having accessing Zupco buses. Are these moves that you guys are welcoming?
So we are very happy because at least they are responding to our call for a solution to the transport crisis. But obviously, at the end of the day, we expect better. Obviously, when they promise to bring 1,000 buses, we can't be celebrating because we know the shortfall is beyond 1,000 buses being produced. But why are we pursuing this monopoly of Zupco? It's not even a state program. It is the private players who are being preferred here. We know the profits are being pocketed by Tabgire and others. The buses are not even state-owned. So why are we punishing our people to get a few people getting richer? We know if it was a state project, we would be patient with our state, ensuring that we get state-funded public transport. But we know this is not owned by the state. These buses are owned by private players. But why are we barring other private citizens from participating in the transport sector and allowing the legs of some cartels to run the transport industry when it's blocking? So at the end of the day, if we want to ensure that we resolve the transport crisis, state has to be clear. If it is the state that is running the transport sector, it has to ensure that it runs it efficiently and even try to subsidize the existing private players so that we have everyone being transported. What is so wrong with getting all these private operators who are there, getting them to operate? It's a subsidy sometimes, if the state wants to be the sole player. Don't want a situation where private players hide behind the state, hide behind the name of Zupco, and then still extract the profits from our people. But it is the worst expenses.
Ramasaraure, let me ask you this then, with that argument. Private players, government is not denying them the opportunity to participate. They're just saying you need to register under Zupco to ensure, like what government is saying, that all the COVID-19 regulations are abided by. Because when government is giving out these situations, for example, under Zupco, they're making sure that all operators have equal access to all necessities needed to prevent COVID-19. So how would you then argue against that?
No. The Zupco monopoly situation is worsened the COVID-19 crisis. You can see how people are congesting at the bus stops, waiting for almost 4 hours. You see thousands milling around waiting for transport. How are we managing the COVID-19 situation by ensuring that our people are crowded? We are saying we need not more than 100 people to be at a particular venue together. But we are seeing thousands milling around waiting for this Zupco monopoly. So you see when they board the buses, they are also very much crowded. There are no standard operating procedures being adhered to. And again, the government should not come to us and pretend like Zupco is still being owned by the state. Let's be clear to each other that these buses that were received from Belarus are not owned by the Zimbabwe state. They are owned by Tabgire and some of the cartels that are fleecing the people of Zimbabwe of their hard-earned money. They are extracting the little that we have as a people. So at the end of the day, we are getting the waste of service from private players who are making profits. It would have been better if it was a state project. It will say as a state we are marching towards progressive realization of public transport which is run by our own state, and we would be proud. But we don't have anything to be proud of. We are suffering and others are making profits. And because the COVID-19 situation is actually worse with the Zupco monopoly.
Right.
So what we are simply saying is that we have to do away with this monopoly and have efficient public service, state subsidized efficient public transport.
Zvino tichipedza hedu hurukuro yedu vamasaraure ndachida kumbobatawo nyaya nerwimi rwamai. Ndanchikumbura kuti mutange panyaya yemazupco buses mutsanangurirawo vateereri kuti nyaya iyi yekushayikwa kwemabhazi kana kuti kusawana mabhazi zviri nyore zviri kukanganisa sei vechidiki kana kuti vadzidzi patinotarisa nyaya yekuvhurwa kwezvikoro.
Kushayikwa kwemabhazi kuri kuita kuti vechidiki vanoda kuenda kuchikoro vatadze kusvika kuchikoro kwacho. Vamwe vanenge vakwanisa kusvika pavanoda kudzoka kumba kana vari vanasikana vakwanise kuzobatwa murodhi chivharo nenyaya yekuti vachafamba pakati peusiku vachimirira zupco mutauni kusvikira razovasisa kumba kana na8 na10 zvataingoziva kuti vana vechikoro vanokurumidza kusvika kuma4 kushaitawo kuti kumbunyikidzwa kwemadzimai anenge achida kushingirira kuti vapinde. Tinoona vachibatwa mazamu vachipunikidzwa kuti vakwanise kushingirira kupindawo. Tinoona hapana ari kunyanyobatsirika. Zvikoro zvinofanira kuti zvitangira 8 nguva dzekutanga na10 na11 varayiridzi nevana vachinonoka kusvika nekuda kwekushayikwa transport. Pararira kwedenda reCovid-19 kuchiwedzera nenyaya yekuungana kwakanyanyisa kuri kuitwa nevanhu vachiungana vasati vapinda muzupco nekuzoungana vapindamo zvakare. Zvinove zvinhu zvine njodzi yakakurisa panguva yatikuedza kurwisana nedenda iri.
Zvino mungati muri kutambira here matanho ari kutorwa nehurumende mukugadzirisa dambudziko iri? Takaona vane mangwana vachitwita kuti aiwa hurumende iri kutenga mamwe mabhazi ezupco uyezve nhasi tanzwa kambani yeNRZ nayo ichiti iri kupindawo munyaya mukubatsira vanhu kuitira kuti vakwanise kusvika kune madestinations avo zviri nyore.
Chetirode kuti tirege kunyoberana ndechekuti hurumende isanyede sekune ndiyo iri kutenga mabhazi ezupco. Takazviona kuti mabhazi ezupco akune akabva kuBelarus. Takazoona kuti haasi edu, haasi hurumende, ndeyava natagwirei nevavo. Project yemazupco iyi haichisiri yestate, yakatotorwa nemaprivate players. Isu chedu chevanhu kutambura chete, kutambudzwa nevashoma vari kuzadza mari mudzihomwe dzavo. Saka hapana chatikatambira apa. Tinoziva kuti chero mabhazi acho 1000 asiri edu estate zvakare, achiuya ari evashoma vari kuteswa nehurumende yavaMnangagwa kuti vabire vamwe kuti vamhanyirane mabhazi. Tiri kuti isu chingatobatsire chete ndechekuti state kana ichida kuita zvepublic transport ngaimbosubsidiza maprivate operators ese arimo odzoka achimonitiwa kuti ari kushanda zvakanaka, achiwana masubsidy kuti vanhu vasadhurwe netransport. Munguva iyoyo tichigadzira inefficient transport system. Hatina ngoti zvitima zvatinongoziva tese kuti zvikangoti fambe zvafa, chikatifambepo chikamuka apo chafira apo totanga kufunga kuti zvichatanga kuita miracle nhasi yekuti zvichatakura vanhu. Tese tinoziva kuti we need to revamp the railway system yedu yemuZimbabwe, tiwane zvitima zvitsva, kwete kupenda kwatakaita gore riya, asi kutotenga zvitima chaizvo zvinoita kuti zvifambike, decentralize nyaya yekurangwa kwepublic transport. Tinoona kune dzimwe nyika ukaenda kunana South Africa, ukaenda kunana America, tinoona mametropolitan achirana transport. Why is federal government trying to monopolize? Why don't we trust Harare City to run transport yemuHarare imomo iri efficient, tichiwana mametro buses, tichiwana mametro railways? Inyaya yekuti zvinhu zvinogona kuitiwa, asi mapolicies edu ndo anoda kuti agadziriswe tamirire central government yedu isade kubata zvese iye yaradza kuti haina chairi kugona. Iri kungogona kutora zvinhu zvenyika ichiisa kumaoko evashoma, kubva kutransport, kubva kuprocesswa kwegold rate kufidelity, tiona zvese zvichitobvutwa kubva kunyika zvichipiwa mahomwe evashoma kuti vazviitire zvavo.
Zvino tichipeta hedu hurukuro yedu vamasaraure nekuti nguva ndiyo yadyanana, within a minute ndeapi mashoko amungada kusiyira vadzidzi, varayiridzi pamwe nevabereki?
Hatina kutenda ngoma vanhu kuti ngamine pasi.
Vamasaraure
ndaudzwa mukoma mabvudza mubvunzo wekuti
ndandati within a minute ndachikumbura kuti mukande mashoko enyu ekupedzisira kune vadzidzi, vabereki pamwe nevarayiridzi.
Mashoko ekupedzisira ndeyekuti vadzidzisi nevabereki ngatiise musoro pamwe chete, tirwise tireclaim education yedu iyo yakuenda kumawere iri kupondwa nevanhu vasina hanya nayo, vane vana vavo vasingadzidze mumapublic schools anoenda vana vedu. Tizive kuti nhamo yaticha inhamo yeeducation, tizive kuti nhamo yevabereki yekusabhadhara fees inhamo yeeducation. Tisabvume kudivhaidwa, tibatane, tijoine campaign yaMogamete Trust Union yatiri kuti tiri kuda vanhu 5 million vanomiririra zvido zvevana 5 million vedu vari kunyimwa right to education nevanhu vane umbimbidoga vari kutungamirira. Zvingangogone chete tikabatana tikaisa ruzha rwakawanda mumastreets nezvimwe zvinhu zvatingaite zvese kuti tivamanifidze kuti bhajeti ravanoisa mueducation riwedzere kubva pa13% yavari kuita kuenda pa20% iyo yavakasainira paDhaka Declaration.
Regai ndikubate ipapo vaMasaraure nguva ndiyo yadyanana. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us, Mr. Masaraure. We really appreciate your time, and thank you again to Mr. Moyo, your spokesperson, who was with us earlier on. Muri Zimbabwe sesifikile emaphethelweni ohlelo lwethu labasakhulayo. Earlier on we had Unkosi Khona Diviti, we had Mr. Thembagaye Moyo who joined us, and Mr. Opet Masaraure. Both of them are from TUS. Kwanelo kwalamhla mthwakazo omuhle Zimbabwe muhle, asidibaneni kuhlelo lwethu lwabasakhulayo, same time same place, lapha emsakazweni we-Studio 7. Olivalisayo igama nguMike Hove. Mthwakazo muhle, Zimbabwe muhle, muri Zimbabwe.